Photoshop CS6 is packed with new features. And if you're curious, you could switch from the Essentials workspace to New in CS6. I'm going to jump through a few of them. I'll start by doing Image, Adjustments, and Curves. And in fact, in the menus, anything highlighted in blue has been improved or has new features to it. So if I choose Curves, in the Curves dialog, there's a new option under Options. And if I click Options, for the first time ever, they are now plotting points on the curve when you do automatic settings. I could switch to Enhance the monochromatic contrast, Enhance per channel, adjusting the red, green, and blue on this image, find the darkest and lightest colors, and you could see in the background how this is affecting the image. In fact, I'm going to click OK and scoot this window over to the right and click Options again. And if I simply hit Enhance Brightness and Contrast, you could see where it mapped a point for me. And I could specify target colors if I wanted to do so, or make a new default. But I'll click OK and click OK again and just hit Command Z or Control Z to see a little before and after. Looking at the New in CS6 workspace, Mini Bridge has been improved. And if I go back to Essentials, it's typically docked at the bottom. So now I'm looking at all of my assets in our Chapter 1 folder. I'll double-click to collapse that and go back to New in CS6. And layers have been improved. Now this document contains no layers, so I'm going to close it, and I won't save the changes. This wedding story document is actually a video. Now with Photoshop Standard, you do not need to purchase Extended, but with Standard you can do very easy video editing. So if I look at layers, I can see I actually have a 3D layer. 3D does require Photoshop Extended, so you won't be able to do that. But I can also see that I have a background layer. And in the Layers panel, you can filter by kind, by a layer name, by effects that are applied or layer blending modes, or a specific attribute or layer color that you've given it. In fact, if you have smart objects in the document, I could filter by smart objects only, by vector layers. What used to be called shape layers are now known as vector layers, and they are just that, shapes that you can edit or redefine. So I have no smart objects, I have no shape layers, I have no type layers. If you had adjustment layers on, you could see only those, or pixel layers. If I turn this filter on, the wedding story, 3D text, and the background both have pixels. So these are your new filtering options, which is immensely helpful if you do app mockup or mobile mockup, just to get to the right layer when you're dealing with documents that have hundreds of layers. I'm going to clear the filter by hitting this little red box. If I go to the Adjustments panel, you no longer see the settings for a layer in the Adjustments panel. And I'm going to close this wedding story document. And I won't save the changes. So if I wanted to do an adjustment on this, in fact, this image is one from Chapter 9 where we actually show the improved iris blur, where you can actually do multiple iris blurs that radiate out from the couple and radiate out from the shoes, blurring everything here. But if I wanted to add an adjustment layer, let's say to do a color overlay so it gets a hue over top of the image, I can pause over each icon in Adjustments until I find the exact one that I'm looking for. And I'm going to do Hue and Saturation. But when you do Adjustments now, the Adjustments panel is a quick way to get there, and Properties is brand new. What you used to adjust in Adjustments is now controlled in Properties. And Properties is used for a lot more stuff. It'll actually show you 3D properties. But here in the Properties panel, I'm on Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to hit Colorize. And I'll aim for a little bit of a sepia tone, an orangish looking image, to make this look aged. If I go back to the Layers panel, and I were to filter back down on Adjustment Layers, I could see just the hue and saturation has been added. I won't save this either, I'm just giving you a tour. And I should have mentioned it at first, but the biggest difference is the overall interface. There is a new dark interface. In fact, I've been using Photoshop now for a couple months, and when I go back to CS5, it feels old to me with the white tools and the light colored panels. If you don't love the dark interface, you can right-click anywhere on the gray, and this has actually been there for a few versions, but I could go back to a light gray background, for example, or back to the default, or through Photoshop Preferences on the Mac, or Edit Preferences interface on Windows, you can actually change the overall color theme. So I can choose the darkest, the default, or a lightest interface, which will change the panels and the tools as well. I'm going to leave it on the default and click OK. And I'll close this image and I won't save the changes. Lighting effects have been dramatically improved and they happen right now directly on the stage. So I put a green light on her face and a white spotlight on the spot on her hair. CS6 also added under the Filter menu a new oil paint filter. So when you're in the New in CS6 workspace, I could see under Blur, the Field Blur, Iris Blur, and Tilt Shift, or under Render that you can now do lighting effects directly on your image, on your canvas or stage. You don't work through a plugin dialog. So you could take some time to surf through each of the menus and see what has been added in the New in CS6 workspace. But in this shot, if I zoom in a bunch, I can actually see an oil paint filter has been added. So if I wheel up, there's the family oil painted. And if I scroll back to the left, there's the original shot. So I just put them side by side so you can see the difference. A very powerful new filter that's automatically included. You used to have to install this separately with the Pixel Bender set. I'll close this, and huge for anyone who does web mockups and mobile mockups, we now have paragraph styles, where you could see I have several added for this document, and character styles, where I have a bold character style. So in paragraph styles, if I wanted to change all of my headings, I could double click on heading and maybe change my font to something else. Let's just go to hobo. Not that that looks good, but just so that it's radically different. And once I've switched it to hobo and clicked OK, anything that's using the O2 heading style automatically gets updated to hobo. And it looks like it was only used in this individual spot. I'll undo that, but there are quite a few paragraph styles which are great for global edits. And in fact, I'm just not even going to save the changes to this. I'll close it, and I hit Don't Save. They added underneath the Patch tool a new Content-Aware Move tool. And all I did to move this couple from the right side of the image was select them, and with Content-Aware Move, drag them to the left side. So this is the original shot. This is after the Content-Aware Move. And Repose is now gone. In the Layers panel, I have a 3D layer. And if I select the 3D object with the Move tool, all my 3D tools are now on the Move tool. They aren't separate tools on the toolbar, because that's really what you're doing, is moving the 3D object. And the Properties panel shows information relative to 3D objects. The brushes have been improved and there's more options. There are more brush presets. In fact, they've included a number of John Derry, D-E-R-R-Y. He had brush presets that he was providing for years that are now included out of the box. So Google John Derry, D-E-R-R-Y, and you'll see some outstanding use for Photoshop brushes. The timeline got a lot easier, and if I'm in the Essentials workspace at the top, you'll see that the mini bridge and timeline are now together at the bottom left on my window. And those are most of the new features in Photoshop CS6. So take some time to switch to the new in CS6 workspace, surf through your menus to see what's improved and what's added. And I should mention for the photographers out there, Contact Sheet is back. It's no longer a separate install. You can build Photoshop contact sheets by pointing to a folder of images. But take some time, surf through the menus, look at the panels on the right to see what is improved and what is changed, and I'm sure you'll love Photoshop CS6 as much as I do.